do they want to go? Where do they want to go and take the enterprise forward? Where do they want their employees and workers and the management to proceed? How do they how do they view and perceive their stakeholders, shareholders particularly, and the other stakeholders like creditors, debtors, and employees, and all other people who are dealing with the enterprise? A leader has to be, in such a position where he can really take the support of everyone, all the stakeholders who are associated with the company. Well, I would say that uh, as a CEO of a large enterprise and the experience that I had, I found that if you deal with people, if you know the people management, I think you are a good leader and you can successfully steer a company. And that is what I also did. The company, which was in a great loss and a sick company, in fact, although a big corporation of the government of India running for the last close to 50 years. But then, if you build confidence in the people, if you give them powers, empower them, and work with, with the ethics and your values, some systems, the enterprise succeeds because of the understanding of the people and support of the people. I was looking at, in fact, from my experience as to what are the essential traits of a good leader and how do enterprises succeed because of the good leaders. I found that at number one, it was the clarity of vision. The leader should have his vision very clear as to where does he see the company or the enterprise that he is leading going to go after, say, maybe 20 years, 30 years. In almost, I would say that long-term vision is the first thing, but then long-term vision has to be broken into various short-term visions also, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But of course, within the long-term vision. And with the vision, you can really create conglomerates if you have a large vision. If you are thinking of a very small, then of course you will be able to create only small business enterprise. In the current era of globalization, where you need to build competitive strengths, there are many issues which need personal attention and the goal setting by the leader. Building competitive strengths require cost cutting. Building competitive strengths requires scaling up your operations. Building competitive strengths requires developing new markets, preparing your staff, training your staff, empowering your manpower. All these things require, in fact, uh, to be clubbed, and that has to come from the leader, from the top to bottom, to prepare your team, the team which can really perform well, which can really give you and achieve the vision that you have set for the company and the enterprise. So vision and supported by vision is your mission, and then um, action plan, goals and action plan. All these things have to be set right. Then these manpower and the employees and the management will really understand as to what do they have to perform and what is expected of them. Second thing, I would say the knowledge to the leader himself, because he has to prepare himself and get adequate knowledge and have adequate knowledge, possess adequate knowledge, because otherwise he can't impart knowledge and his vision and goals and action plan to the management that he is expecting to perform for himself. So that is another issue which is important. And unless the leader has complete knowledge of the ecosystem and the enterprise, he can't succeed. That is what my impression is. You should have adequate knowledge of the business, about the ecosystem, about the model, about how are you going to take it forward. So all these things and the business plan. That is very important for you to develop a business plan so that you can take the team into confidence with that business plan. Then one more important thing which I have seen is the your own conduct. The leader's conduct is watched by all the stakeholders and the employees. If you are if your conduct is unethical, you follow practices which are unethical, which lack value-based conduct, naturally people will take you, you know, in a different way. They will understand that probably you are not a truthful and right person, and that also is associated with the compliances of the law. So there also, it is both associated. If you are unethical in your business practices, you will be compromising on compliances of statutory requirements, legal requirements, taxation issues, and all those get, murky if you are not able to properly show your ethical behavior and the value-based conduct. I would say another issue which a leader has to really take care of is the training part. Uh, Training to the employees and training to the staff. Uh, if, I mean, if you are not able to train and empower your staff, they will not understand as to what is expected of them, and their efficiency level, their performance will be much, much less. That is another important thing which I thought I would highlight. And empowering the staff, that is very important, because unless you give them the delegation and empower them, uh, give them the autonomy of working, it will not result in proper outcomes. Well, risk taking is part of the leadership role. Entrepreneurial abilities are in fact required. That first of all, you should be confident in your venture, you should be risk taker, and not that you should be taking undue or avoidable risks, but then the associated risks which are associated with your business to steer the company or the business forward, they are very important. And of course, as I said, that a leader has to be strictly always on the right side of the law. People forget that, and that is why they land into a lot of difficulties. Why all these, thousands and lakhs of accounts are becoming NPAs with the banks? We have seen even large corporates turning into NPAs, non-performing assets, and being fined by various government authorities because of the, somewhere there is a gap in proper implementation of statutory requirements and meeting the compliances of the government. So that is role of the leader, in fact, right from very beginning. And if you are really right side of the law always, and you take care of the compliances, statutory compliances, it will always help your company and always, help prospering of your enterprise. And last, I would say, before I invite my on distinguished guests, is the monitoring. You see, you may do a lot of work in the company. You may empower the employees, train them, you set the goals and action plan for them. But your role should be continuous monitoring. And for continuous monitoring, you have to set the targets and you have to set the periodicity at which you are going to really monitor, because that will give you an idea as to where the company is really proceeding according to your vision and the action plan that you have set forth. So that is all about leadership. I think we also have another issue associated with the quality management. I would only say in brief before inviting the experts that I have seen that it is not only quality of the products or physical things, quality in your mind, quality in your actions, quality in your conduct, quality in the processes, quality in every part of vision that you see and perform and decide to do in your company. Quality has to remain at the forefront, because otherwise you are going to lose out substantially in terms of not only production but also in terms of your grace and the progress of the company. I would stop here. We will keep talking about these issues at a later stage. I would like to invite our guest, the first guest, Mr. Rahul Agarwal, who is a licensed partner, LMI India, and principal consultant, executive coach. He has been a very passionate human resource professional and has spent a good 19 years of experience, although his experience is more, total experience, 19 years in the training and consulting fields. He is an executive transformational coach and a specialist in the area of people behavior and performance. Well, with so much of rich experience, he joined the IT sector, TCS, very good, a big company, of course, and he has run a lot of programs and interventions ranging from purely motivational to highly competency driven, and has worked with varied organizations like TCS, Genesis, and many other big companies. Of course, there are a list of ventures. So I think Mr. Agarwal, having said a few words about the leadership and the qualities, we would like to know as to what are your views on these two issues. Over to you, Mr. Rahul Agarwal, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. It is not an easy task to follow somebody like yourself who has, paved the way for the entire session today with your enlightened words. And I will try my best to do justice to what you have put forth already. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone who has joined the session today. Welcome to the session. I think I am amidst the people who are actually making the Make in India mandate happen for the country. And it's not just out there in words, all of you are actually living it. So it's really exciting to be there with all of you. Please allow me a moment to bring my slide deck up. So not with the objective of killing you with the slides, but yeah, having a visual just so that there is something to really look at while we have the interaction. So the title, as you can see here for my brief talk, is going to be about creating sustainability and success in tough times, which, as we all understand, we are seeing it, we are experiencing it firsthand. And specifically, as Dr. Kumar also mentioned, what is the impact of leadership per se? And he talked about development of people, training, empowerment. So how do those elements come together? Success, leadership, development, and then how do you actually make it work together to create the impact? So this is a good quote to start with, perhaps, that each one of us, I'm sure, I've also experienced that self-employment. All of you have been doing it for so many years. You would have seen that, yes, the business would have got built, but in the process, so many lives would have got changed. You would have impacted not just the people who have worked with you over the years, but the lives of so many others who are associated with them. And that building of people is actually what really drives the engine on and on. You get people who delivers for the organization, and they in turn take back with them something which enriches their life. So that's a positive maybe thought to start the session. So I'll just quickly share with you what is the agenda for my talk. Quick introduction. I think Dr. Kumar had already done enough justice to more than the required justice to introduce me. So I won't talk about myself, but briefly about the organization that I come from. And then we'll be discussing and looking at success. What's the role of attitude and habits in success? How do we create a sustainable change in our attitude or wherever it is required for higher results? And then, of course, I'll be talking about very briefly about a case study where success was created, so that it's not just about talk, it's about having real proof for what has been achieved. And then, of course, just before we start with, I'm sure everybody is aware about the online participation. It's been happening for so long now, we are all aware. But just to reinforce and reiterate, please use the chat as a running commentary. All of us watch cricket, hear cricket, so commentary, please use the chat as a running commentary so that we get to know what are your thoughts as we move along. That's just quick, brief one. As you see here on the slide, so I think rest of the stuff Dr. Kumar has already mentioned about me. What I like to talk about is also what's there in the center. I've also been a martial arts practitioner for the last 28 years now, and I've been teaching actively for more than 19 years. I teach people of all age groups, right from 6 to 60. Of course, being in the virtual session, there is no concern, for personal safety. Now I won't be beating up anybody. In classroom sessions, typically we get to hear that joke. Okay, please don't try your karate on us. So, but that's about me, and the rest of the stuff Dr. Kumar has already shared, so I won't repeat and waste our time unnecessarily. Let me briefly talk about the organization that I come from. So I'm a licensed partner with LMI, Leadership Management International. And as you see here on the slide, it is spread across more than 80 countries across the globe. It has been there for more than 60 years, and hence the power of the work has been proved over and over. It has been implemented across thousands of organizations. I would say across the globe, it has been maybe much more than just thousands of organizations, big and small. So in India, we have worked with people like Aditya Birla Group, to Saint Cobain, ICICI, the entire Hero Group, and many more. And then amongst the SME segment, we have worked with thousands of organizations. Spread out across entire India today, we are present across 21 cities in person, and virtually, of course, we are catering to the entire country. And overall, globally, we have touched the lives of more than 4 million people, which is a big number. And this is transformational work that we do, results-based leadership development and performance enhancement that we do, which I'll talk about briefly towards the end of what I'm presenting. Okay, so getting into the core of the agenda, and this is where I would urge all of you to really jump in, participate, and it will be great to hear your thoughts in this session, making it more of a two-way process rather than just a one-way talk from me. What do all of us want? What do you want for your business? Yes. If we can have it in the chat, what do you want for your business? Wonderful, great success. So let's have a big round of applause for Mr. Joshi, CP Joshi. Profitable growth, Prabhat. Great, thank you. Yeah, keep it coming. And I'll keep moving every few seconds so that we maintain an even pace, but it will be great if more people can participate. Just jump in with your thoughts. So yes, we want success. Mr. Singhal is saying, what should be expected? Recognition. So we define success in many different ways. Yes, that's true. At the same time, in today's time, how do we create the success? How do we make all of these things that we want? How do we make it happen? It's tough, it's volatile. The environment has been really, really harsh over the last 1.5, 2 years, and we don't know how things are going to be as we move along. There is huge uncertainty. How do we create success in such a time? Any thoughts around there? What needs to be done? Or is it that this tough phase is limited to only now? It never existed earlier, never happened earlier. Maybe not in the same form and shape. It would have been differently there for all of us. So Mr. Joshi says, by managing yourself. Excellent thought, Mr. Joshi. So yes, we have, I'm sure all of you would be familiar with this. This is called the circle of concern, that we have a tough environment out there. We have lockdowns happening very frequently, and hence business is impacted, demand gets affected, people are scared, and hence all sorts of things are happening around us. But then, can we do something about the environment outside? How many of us can really be? Exactly, Mr. Singhal, can anybody from outside really help? That's a big question. We can't, and we like to talk about weather, politics, and who did what and what not. But can we really do anything about the environment? So then, coming back to what Mr. Joshi said, by managing yourself. Exactly. So that's the other circle we talk about, circle of influence. How can we expand the circle of influence? And I'm sure all of you are already familiar about this, so I'm not going to be talking too much about these two circles. But then what? So if we are to expand the circle of influence for ourselves and for our people, then what are we saying? What do we ask ourselves and our people to change in their behavior, in their actions, in their responses to this environment? We can't go outside and change that environment, but how we are responding to that change environment is what is in our hands, and how we can do more of it. So what can we do out there?
So it will remain unmuted.
Sorry. Yep. So should we ask our people to work harder, faster, better? Should we also be doing that as business owners, as leaders? So what does that mean really? What does harder, faster, and better mean? You know, we just had the Olympics concluding. So is it about, yeah, just running faster is going to get me it? Always question the status quo. Wonderful, Prabhat. That's a wonderful point. Questioning the status quo. Any other thoughts on this? What does that better mean? What does that faster mean? What does that harder mean?
Only when you are alone.
And I would call upon what Mr. Kumar had shared with us earlier, that, you know, business owners show the direction. Business owners really talk about also the risk appetite. And all of you are actually business heads because you had the risk appetite. So doing different then would mean what for our people? So let's have a look at that. In terms of first looking at what actually helps us in creating success. Just give me a moment. The videos are coming in the way. Yep. So success, what does success come from? Where does it come from? What leads to success? So I'll keep waiting for a few seconds for your responses, any inputs. Okay. From your commitment and conviction, in the name of environment, there has been overall hike in input costs, which cannot be taken care of by SME, MSCs. Yep, absolutely. Not only are the costs high, the revenues are impacted, demand has got affected. So there are multiple angles to the entire equation, in fact. So success comes actually from the results that you get. And results that all of you mentioned earlier, that would we want more, maybe revenue, we want more recognition, we want more of something, and maybe less of cost. So it's not always about more of something, it's also about less of some certain things. And Prabhat says sustainable and continuous improvement, which again comes from somewhere. So the results are what Prabhat just mentioned. You know, continuous improvement is a behavior, which is what leads to certain results that we achieve through that. Essentially, behavior is how we act in given situations. And how we act is dependent on our attitudes, the way we think. So a habit of thought is a good way to describe attitude. The thought process, which essentially drives our actions. You know, if somebody is averse of taking risks, will they be open to experiment with certain things? Will they be open to experiment with maybe something new and different? An example, very small example is, I'm sure you would have all seen it, that the helmet manufacturers, they suddenly use their visor manufacturing capacity to make those face shields for everybody. Now, who thought of that? Sorry, I'm getting feedback. And everybody go on mute? So now, who thought of that? And suddenly, how was it repurposed? And I'm sure similarly, many organizations and many industries would have repurposed what they were doing to cater to the new demand which was created for something entirely different. So that's a habit of thought, thinking differently. Now, the interesting part is that the habit of thought comes from the conditioning. And we'll touch upon briefly what is this conditioning. Conditioning is how all of us got our habits, all of us, you know, acquired the way we think through what our parents, significant adults in our lives, teachers, and other people who are guiding us, even the people who we have worked with in the past, or our people they would have worked with in the past, maybe their previous managers, they got that conditioning, repetitive reinforcement of something, which is what we are saying here, spaced repetition, because the conditioning happens over a period of time with intervals in between. You know, it's like you do something today, then you do it again tomorrow, and then it starts becoming a habit. And the spaced repetition is ultimately then what is driving the entire sequence of outcomes. So when Prabhat says sustainable and continuous improvement, it has to be reinforced at that level, essentially, before it becomes into a habit, which leads to a habit of thought, to action, habit of action, and then we get the results we want to. But this is not the end of it. This is actually the beginning, that this is how we get success. But then now the environment has changed. So what do we do? How do we actually, you know, address the concerns, address the issues, which are the challenges which are coming up? So we talked about conditioning, and let me spend a few moments here going a little deeper into conditioning and how it impacts how we think, how we behave. Now, does this remind you of something? Right from your childhood, what is that one word which you would have heard the maximum number of times from the significant people around you? When you were kids, from your adults, the parents, the teachers around, When you grew up, maybe from other people around you, at times from managers and leaders also, no, just go and do what I am telling you to do. No, 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 you don't get the approval. No, don't tell me your idea. Yeah. So what does this word no do to us? Over and over, when this conditioning happens in the mind, what Dr. Kumar was saying earlier, risk taking capacity, entrepreneurship, is it going to encourage that or is it going to discourage that? And I'm sure all of you are, business leaders. You would have not let this impact you. That's why you became those entrepreneurs and business leaders. But what about the people who are working with us? Actually, our success now depends on them, what they are going to be doing. Are they impacted with this kind of conditioning? Are they looking at how things can be done, or are they looking at how things cannot be done, giving you reasons, excuses, and all sorts of things as to why something cannot be done? Yeah, outside, of course, everybody has that challenge of low demand. Customers are not buying, and other things which are happening. So then, should we just sit down and do nothing? That big no. So talking about conditioning and how it impacts us, how many of us have seen an elephant? I'm sure that's a redundant question. All of us have seen an elephant, but how about seeing an elephant up close? And I'm sure many of you would have seen that, and you would have been surprised looking at the big elephant tied with a thin, small rope. While if you look at the baby elephant, it has been tied with a chain. So an elephant is so very strong, it can lift tons of weight, but it is not breaking this rope. Why? Because as a baby elephant, it tried and tried and tried, it could not break the chain. And that's the power of conditioning, that today, when the big elephant, after it has grown up and become so strong, it still, it still thinks that it cannot break that rope it has been tied with. But what about our people? What about the mindset that they're bringing in? Yes, habituated, conditioned. So what's happening there? It is the I can't, which is getting reinforced in people's minds. So when we talk about leadership development, and there are so many things that Dr. Kumar also talked about, how about this particular dimension of I can't? And I'm sure this is the distinction. This is the differentiator between you as entrepreneurs and business heads and maybe so many other people who do not see possibilities. So how do we generate these possibilities in our people? So are people behaving similarly, trapped manner, restraints in thought, action, results, the kind of behaviors that they have, the kind of reasoning they give us, excuses they give us at times, something cannot be done. All these are self-imposed limitations in their own mind, just like that of the big elephant. It is not in real. And the elephant's behavior is something which is happening. It is actual. It's not just in the books or something which is talked about as a imaginary thing. It is real behavior. Same with us. These chains of low self-concept. So how do we actually help our people to break those chains? So first, let's do a small experiment. I would request all of you to interlock your fingers, your hands like this, and figure out which thumb is on the top. For some people, it might be the left thumb. For some people, it might be the right thumb. The point is, okay, how are you feeling holding your hands this way? Somebody might say, oh, what a foolish question. Why are you asking this? So let's do this. Shift our hands by one place so that the other thumb comes on the top. Get the other thumb on the top. How does it feel now? So for this, I'll hope to get more inputs on the chat. How does it feel now? Successors, inheritors are of part, whereas the startups are positive. Thanks, Mr. Singhal. Yeah, so even changing this much is the power of conditioning, is telling our minds, no, not comfortable. Thank you, Parag. Oh, that's what I was waiting for. Not comfortable, changing this much. So just imagine changing years of conditioning that people have gone through right from their childhood. How would that really happen? Easily. And when we do those 1 day, 2 day training programs and we expect that change to happen, it does not. Somebody has gone through 30 years of conditioning, 40 years of conditioning, like that baby elephant. Now they're unable to just come out of it just like that. So moving ahead, outcome of conditioning is this fixed mindset. And Dr. Kumar gave us certain examples of organizations like Jet, Kingfisher, and I'm sure there are many more such examples. I'll quote maybe just one or two. I'm sure all of us have heard of Edison and the bulb story, but there is one more story behind it. So he used to work with an organization which used to make candles. And one day he went to the organization, went to his management and said, okay, from today, we should stop being in the business of selling candles. We should, enter the business of making this device I have made. And he put some wires and suddenly there was light. And management says, no, no, we will continue to do the same thing that we have been doing. We don't believe in what you are talking about. And you know the rest of the story. So Thomas Alva Edison made the bulb and then he made GE. And then the rest is history. One more example of current times is Netflix. Won't go there. How about mobile banking that all of us are using today? How many of us were using 5 years back? So power of conditioning is that, people develop a fixed mindset. Failure is my limit of my abilities. I don't like to be challenged. When I'm frustrated, I give up. So imagine how and when somebody with this fixed mindset is going to take risks. In this current state of affairs, when things are not going right, will they rise up to the challenge? So how do we really help our people achieve more? Break these chains, unhook and really pull out the stakes from the ground. How can we make it happen? I just took you through one process of where success comes from. So let's look at the reverse process. And yeah, as an organization, when we do our programs, we enable people to develop certain new ideas, habits, and that power of new thinking. So what happens then is that using those new ideas, powerful ideas with space repetition, that same space repetition which leads to conditioning, it leads to a new conditioning happening for people. We break out of that, comfort zone that we fall into. Stop believing like the big elephant that the rope cannot be broken. And hence, that is the new thinking process, new attitudes that we are developing. Risk taking, yes. Looking at challenges, yes. Looking at maybe failures as something which happens, but we learn from it and we move ahead, yes. So that leads to new behavior. Let's do more of it. Let's continue to, okay, something did not work. Notice behavior of successful professional. Absolutely, Prabhat. What are they doing differently? And a very interesting thought is, some things will succeed, some things will not succeed. What's next? What is the next thing that I need to be doing instead of getting stuck in where I am today? What is the next which has to happen? Yeah. Also, in a situation of crisis, yeah, there might be a cost of time or of money or of the opportunity. Which cost am I willing to bear? That brings a little more clarity to the mind. And ultimately, if we are improving the quality of our results, it leads to greater success for us. Now,
can I request you to kindly speed it up, because we were given only 10 minutes each.
Oh, okay, so sure. Another 2 minutes. Another 2 minutes. I am about done. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's very interesting, in fact, but we'll make it a little more interactive at the end of the program. Mr. Paul is also waiting.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will speed up. Actually, we are towards it. So outcome of new conditioning, from fixed mindset, we move towards growth mindset. That challenges help me grow. Let me take risk. Let me also fail at times. Failure helps me as an opportunity to grow. And of course, I'll move on from here. This is something we can keep talking. But yeah, moving towards the end of it, one might say that, okay, as an organization, LMI, how do you do it? How would you make that difference? Now, there's a popular fallacy that successful people have a huge difference as compared to average people, average performers. Is it really that? When you look at here on the screen, I'm sure you would have seen it in horse races, maybe on the media, these photo finish kind of situations. And the difference that you see between the first and the second is only a fraction of an inch. But what about the reward money? The first horse, how much would be the reward money as compared to the second? Same, 10% different, 20% different, 30% different. Actually, it might be 5 times, even 10 times, if you look at really how much our cricketers earn, who are the topmost as compared to the average. But the difference is not really great. There is only a difference of slight edge. And that's what, as an organization, as what we do in our leadership programs, we help people develop that slight edge. How they can bring about major differences in their performance by just adopting this slight edge, which makes all the difference to the outcomes. So 3 characteristics of successful people that we actually help build through our programs are positive mental attitude, people who look at solutions and not problems, people who look at what we can do instead of looking at what we cannot be doing or how it cannot be done. They look at strengths instead of looking at their problems and limitations. They are goal directed. They know where they are, where they want to be, something that Dr. Kumar talked about, goal setting and setting the vision, and how to get there. They also know clearly how to get to the achievement of the goals. And then third one is self-motivated. They know how to crank their own clock and their own machine. As leaders, you don't have to really be, chasing them. They are self-motivated because they are more achievement-oriented in that sense. I won't talk about this, how it happens. This is traditional programs, no reinforcement. This is what we do, a lot of reinforcement. But I just want to touch upon, in the closing, one case study of one organization. I'm pulling out one organization from the thousands that we have covered. And this is the outcome. This is the impact, real business impact. We are not talking about people will become happy. They will give you good feedback. Feedback sheets are going to be great. This is real impact of the work which has been done. So financials, you can see. Then the bottom 3 points are about cost saving. And I'm going to move from here. We can, of course, come bring this information back if required. Dr. Kumar has given me the heads up, must close now. And just last one slide, which is about, again, more cost savings. And the last 3 points at the bottom are time savings, which is a major determinant of how people bring about a change. We have had business heads, CXO level people saying that we saved 2 hours every day from our productive time, and we are using it much more productively in doing high impact stuff. So to end my talk with, so do you have gaps between intent and attainment, expectation and execution, or are there missed opportunities in your business? Even in today's time, there will be those who are perhaps doing somewhat better. How about the market share? How much of the market share are we really capitalizing on? Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Dr. Kumar, Mr. Kaul, for your patience, for allowing me to speak for so long.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. I think it was very interesting. In the interest of time, in fact, I had to cut you a little less, but we will have enough time, in fact, at some other date, in fact, to have the complete presentation and a lot of discussion, in fact, that leadership is always very interesting to, and the more you talk, more new things that you get.
Absolutely.
So I was quite impressed with your 3 points that you spoke about, behaviors, attitude, and conditioning. I'm 100% with you on these 3 issues. And when I was talking initially, in fact, my whole, purpose was to draw attention by way of various statements towards these 3 issues only. Thank you very much, in fact, for further strengthening the points. So let me bring in now Mr. Anupam Kaul. Yeah, Mr. Kaul, in fact, sorry for keeping you waiting for such a long time. In fact, both the topics are so interesting, leadership also and quality management also, that we can keep talking for long hours, So let me introduce Mr. Kaul. He is a national level expert in quality and standards and currently acts as a strategic advisor to government and industry. He was a lead on standards, quality management, laboratory management, risk management at the CII. And of course, he has more than 40 years experience in the industrial quality control and standards development, conformity assessment, accreditation, both at national and international level. Of course, the profile is very big. There's a lot of experience that Mr. Kaul has. We would like to hear him, in fact, directly. So over to you, Mr. Kaul.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kumar. And it has been really great listening to you and to Mr. Agarwal. A lot of education for me. And as we say, we always learn when we interact with people. So Mr. Agarwal, very, very good presentation. I'm very, very pleased to be hearing you. So Mr. Kumar, Dr. Kumar, I just wanted to reconfirm. Are we going to be very particular about time? That means 4:15, are we planning to close, or there is a bit of cushion that we keep? Because I had checked with Zumair, he had said 15 minutes. I prepared 15 slides. I normally do a slide a minute. So I'll try and keep to that.
So how much time would you like to?
I think we'll try and do 15, 16 minutes, of course.
No problem. Please,
is that
go
all
ahead.
right? Yeah, if people are prepared. And so the second point for the audience, of course, is, so this is more of an engineer's presentation. So we've had some brilliant presentation from a talk from Dr. Kumar and a very nicely prepared presentation from Mr. Agarwal. This is going to be much more colder and harder. But I hope there will be a lot of takeaways. And I assume that I'm addressing MSMEs from manufacturing, because you see what happens if you look at the demographics of MSMEs in India. It's a very, very wide definition, and 63 million MSMEs as we have today in India, out of which just 30% are in manufacturing. The rest are in trade and services. So generally, when we talk of MSMEs, I mean, when we talk about them like this in forums like this, we talk about manufacturing SMEs, and we tend to generally omit the other two, although Mr. Rahul Agarwal's presentation will apply to everyone, obviously. But more or less, even in CI, when we used to talk SMEs or MSMEs, it used to be manufacturing. So my presentation is mostly going to be directed to the manufacturing SMEs. And also it's going to be a little different from what we have been hearing so far. So kindly bear with me, and if there would be any questions, I'll be most happy to take them later. Right. Some of them, I hope this works. Yeah, okay. Yeah, some of these are just to start, setting the context, and I'm quite sure, I mean, all of you are leaders of MSMEs. So you know this, I'm only reiterating this because what will come later will connect to this. So this is where we are today, the business environment. Incidentally, I prepared this presentation about 5-6 years ago, but the first time we had a SME conference in the CII. So based on my experience of about 20 years in the field, when I was in the BIS doing product certification in different capacities, so that's where I interacted with, I think, about 1,000 SMEs. I must have done that in Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh. And that's where, I mean, all the learning came to me. And over a period of time, I mean, things have certainly changed, improved in very, very large, good measure. But then the problems continue to remain the same in India, unfortunately. So when you go to conferences of SMEs, you continue to hear exactly similar issues from the people who are actually leading this business in India. So therefore I'm only reiterating some of those facts. So we've had the pandemic impact. We talked about it, and it's the MSMEs particularly who bore the brunt the most, primarily because they don't have the financial cushion. The larger industries have it better. Of course, we have overseas threat, which is increasing. I mean, the import threats is increasing. The government is also becoming a bit liberal, despite the fact that we are incentivizing local production, domestic production. I'm with the government in that, in certain ways, but the threat will continue to happen. And as prices go down, you're not only facing competition from the SMEs of other countries, but even the larger industry. The customer expectation continues to increase and get diversified just because of exposure. They get exposed to overseas markets, overseas suppliers, and therefore it just keeps going up. As Mr. Agarwal mentioned, when we do internet banking, our expectation, from the same service has increased over the period of time. It happened the same way in the businesses as well. The supply cycles are shortening. I mean, everybody wants the material yesterday. So that's, and you know that. I mean, so that's what is happening. Labor costs obviously are going to increase in India as things change, as we become more and more, from a factor economy, we become an efficient economy. Labor cost is going to increase. No goes without saying. Tariffs are tightened at this moment. Tariffs will probably remain tightened in the future also. Government is doing its bit to provide some capital infusion through the banks, through the schemes. But on the payment side from your buyers, probably it's still going to remain the same. Skilled manpower shortage. We have abundance of manpower in India. Abundance. I mean, you can hire any number of people. When it comes to skilled manpower, still a sorry state of affairs, despite all the, the Ministry of Skills that we have, the NSDC we have, NSDA we have, all of that. And a lot of skilling exercise going on in the country. Yet when we go on to hire a person, unfortunately, you don't find the right person, or you have to do the skilling yourself. And then a big challenge coming up is, of course, the shift to the new age technologies. And I'll be talking about that a little later. But the need continues to remain the same. You have to produce the products of the best quality at the lowest cost in the quickest time. That's period. That's your take. So that's what we have to gear up for. And the typical MSMEs problems, also you are aware, I'm just repeating them for you. So it's obviously low investment capability unless you get funding. Of course, startups do get funded, but then again, not everybody is very, very fortunate to do that. High cost of borrowings, low margins, obviously typical of SMEs. You have cash crunch, delayed payment because of delayed payments and inadequate credits. There's a plethora of licensing and approvals, and somebody did a recent analysis. Between China and India, we do at least 4 times more licensing. That's the situation in India still. Getting new business is not all that easy because again, customers have become very, very discerning, and there's enough competition both from India and abroad. Inadequate quality infrastructure, not only within the SMEs, but also at the country level. So we are struggling quite a bit to create one. Incidentally, we have all the components in place in the country, but then it's taking time at the state level, at district level, for the quality infrastructure to actually benefit the industry, especially SMEs, who need to get those test laboratories and certifications and all those things in place, and calibration and multiple things like that at the doorstep. That's still not there. Delivery performance is still below commitment level in the SMEs because of multiple reasons. Cannot afford to hire high-cost staff. That applies to many large industry as well, but then more typical to the SMEs. Unable to retain talent. Anybody hires 1,000 rupees more, your person will go away and you can't retain him. Uncertain order book, and then dependence on the outsiders for the technical help, which is not a bad thing actually, but then you still have to find the right person, and probably power to SME kind of a organization should be able to give you the right kind of help in this on this aspect. So what is the typical approach then? So key focus continues to remain on sales and on finance. Obviously, I mean, that's very, very typical, not on my subject, quality or excellence, and or even Mr. Agarwal's subject on, on leadership, on skill development, or, a mindset management, cultural changes. Most SMEs continue to be individually managed. The top management is proprietary driven or, single promoter and run. So don't have professionals running, managers running the companies. It's mostly short-term thinking. I think Dr. Kumar also talked about vision and mission and strategic planning and all of that. But the fact remains, we still do a lot of short-term thinking and decision-making. And short-term means could be just 2 months, 3 months. Many companies don't even make annual plans, unfortunately. Status quo orientation, changes are seen as risky. Kumar also talked about risk-taking, which is extremely important to get that kind of a mindset. But then if you go to companies, talk to the people, itna kar le wahi baat hai. Aage ka sochne ka time nahi hai. So diversification is very difficult. Changes happen only because of compulsion. Client, technology, market, business environment will drive changes, but probably not innovation. Quality essentially means product conformance to standards. That's customer requirements, Indian standard, mandatory, some regulatory standard. We have to somehow meet that. That's it. Nothing beyond that. A lot of firefighting and rejections and rework are assumed to be natural. That means ye to hona hi hai. We can't do anything about it. That's a very, so let me again calibrate this. This is about typical SMEs. This is not about the good SMEs, not about the ones who have actually gone on to won national awards in excellence and who have transformed themselves completely. This is the average SME that I'm talking about. So please bear with me if many of your companies have done better than this. So customer quality, obviously, and we've talked about it before, it's just not defect and error reduction, or just not about meeting specifications, reducing complaints. This is also very, very important. But more important is, can we recover from our mistakes? Can we recover from our defects? Making things right for your customer. If that we can do, it is only then the customers will come back to you. So it's just not, ensuring somehow that we are able to meet the rejection level or the PPM level or the percentage level which is given. But can we resolve customers' issues on, as they use the products? Or I'm talking about business customers, for example, even retail customers. Can we connect with them? Can we help recover from their issues, which is causing them trouble, maybe because of our products or our services or something like this? Okay, so we have to build customer relationships to these extra efforts. Okay, so what does the customer expect? So it is a busy slide. I'll just go through it very, very quickly. On the overall image, they want accessibility from you. They want responsiveness, proactive behavior, better communication, faster communication, clear communication, more transparency. Tell them what you are, tell them what you can offer, don't hide, and can you be flexible? On the product and services side, obviously quality, value for money, reliability in products and services, in responses again, in ability to troubleshoot issues, design innovation. Most of the business customers want that, and efficient delivery, timely delivery, at least when you promise, don't delay it too much. Sales and after sales support, capability, behavior of employees, major issue. Dr. Kumar, Mr. Agarwal both talked about this one. Literature and technical documentation, most of the time this is missing or is inadequate. The manner of handling of complaints, the response time, technical support, and warranty and guarantee provisions. So these are what customers expect. And if you can achieve that, then what you get back is the intention to repurchase. This is all part of loyalties, willingness to purchase other products and services, and willingness to recommend the organization, the referral factor. That increases for you the customer reference, the reference. Okay. So then what is required from all of this? What we need is obviously shorter lead time in design and manufacturing and procurement, all the three. So design is very important. I mean, because you have to keep on innovating the product. Customers want that to happen. So many factors come in. Manufacturing, obviously, lead time end to end. We'll talk about a turnover ratio, and also in the procurements. Reduction in rejection and complaints goes without saying. I mean, everybody knows that, because I'll show you a slide where what really happens if you have more rejections and complaints. Enhance customer satisfaction, more repeat orders, quality cost reduction. So we spend a lot of money on repairs, probably on meeting field failures, on replacements, multiple things. Drastic reduction in defectives and number of defects. Reduction in inventory is a major cost factor. And by applying very simple techniques, it's possible to reduce inventory significantly. Productivity improvement per labor cost or per man day cost, and then the brand improvement. These are the things which normally are required for at the SME level. And for this, then we require the cultural shift. Sorry, just one second. Sorry. Yep. So in the quality definition, it is not product oriented, but we have to become customer oriented. Quality as a priority from not second to sales and cost or finance. It has to be number one. Decision making has to get from short term to long term. Short term is also important, but we have to also think of long term. The emphasis is from detection to prevention of failures. Error handling is not an operational issue, it's a systems issue. It's the top management's job to ensure that errors are handled and removed, not the manager's, not the supervisor's job. Responsibility for quality, not the quality control division. It's everyone's responsibility in the company. Problem solving from managers to teams collectively. Procurement priority from price to quality. And the manager's role is from plan, assign, control, enforcement to delegate, coach, and facilitate. That's the job of the manager, to delegate, coach, and facilitate. I'm sure Mr. Agarwal will be pleased to hear this from me, from a quality professional. Okay. Right. So the first principles of TQM is this, and this is gold. Do the right things right the first time and every time. If you can do this, nothing like it. Okay. So this is what I was talking to you about, the cost of quality, and it's a little busy slide again. But what we have here, if you look at in terms of proportions, you can see the failure costs are the highest, repair costs the next highest, appraisal, inspection, testing costs are the next, and the lowest are the prevention costs. But the benefit is the reverse. So if you put a little money in the prevention, it gives you the maximum benefit. If you put a little more money in appraisal, it gives you more benefit. But then repair and failure costs give you the least benefit, but they consume a lot of your funding. So these are, again, this is the overall graphic on how the quality costing, and you must understand there is the distinction between these four categories. Okay, so what you need therefore sorry, my slide is, it's getting a little covered on the top. Okay, so what you need to do is to develop competencies and skill set, to get into employee engagement tools or involvement tools, and the simplest ones, which so many SMEs do actually, set up small group activities like Kaizen or quality circles or suggestion schemes, act on them, get people to participate, and then some kind of recognition for good work. It's if you can engage people, even if somebody is offering the 100 rupees more, most likely your person is going to remain with you because he gets connected to the company. A lot of visual aids in the company. We have all the documentation and work instructions and multiple things, and no one opens them. So I've been to companies, everything, whatever you need to communicate to a employee on the Gemba on the shop floor is all visual. Now we can use monitors as well. Big screens in the companies are there. Anything, whatever is visual is understood better is implemented better. Implementing 5S, at least 3S, you get organized, you become systematic and standardized. At least that every company, you will find your daily works management will improve drastically. Your costs will go down, your things will be smoother, you become more efficient. So many things, many benefits come, but very simple things, very low cost, but very beneficial. Get into quality analytics. And this is where, so these, what I've listed here are the very traditional tools: check sheets, histograms, control charts, process capability studies, measurement systems analysis, stratification. Very simple, very basic tools, but they give you a lot of insights. But then all of these now are available to you in form of digital tools. So kindly ask your quality control people to become digitally oriented, digitally mature, and start using those tools which are available free of cost in the market. Many of them are free of cost. Set up Poka-Yoke stations. Poka-Yoke, I'm sure many of you are aware. So mistake-proof stations. So this is again a very simple thing. Line balancing will do wonders to your inventory flow. Get from batch production to line production, and the takt time will decrease drastically, improve drastically, and your efficiency will go up. Your inventory turnover ratio will go up, and the cost of capital will also go down significantly. And then, of course, the problem-solving capabilities and tools. Again, all are tool-based. So I've mentioned some of these, but get into the habit of doing Ishikawa's or YY or some analysis, and get to resolve issues that you get on a daily basis. All these Kaizen quality circles will actually help you in getting this done. What you need to reduce is, of course, dead inventory, which is lying in abundance everywhere. Idle machinery. We don't need to have idle. If you don't need to use the machinery, get rid of it. Idle machinery costs money. Maintenance, space, multiple things. Takt time is to be reduced. End-to-end cycle time has to reduce. So do apply the most fundamental principles of lean management, do some war on waste kind of studies, and reduce your idle time in the process. Again, it will lead to a lot of efficiencies. Process rejections have to, not only the end rejections, process rejection, the scrap that you generate. Why do you need to generate? Why can't you produce your first piece the right? Why do you need to have that first or second or third piece to be rejected when you change the die? No, not necessary. Have the right approach, have the right kind of die, get into the single die minute exchange program, SABD program. You will not be doing process rejection. You should not be doing it. Avoid breakdown maintenance, get into preventive maintenance, get into proper predictive maintenance, and very simple techniques. Again, you don't need to get into a full scale TPM. Very simple techniques. You can reduce breakdown maintenance by more than 50%. Frequency of inspection. Why should you inspect if you can make things the best time, the right way? So the frequency of inspection, initially it should be higher. Over a period of time, as the process improves, process performance improves, the need for inspection should go down. Appraisal cost should go down. Preventive cost should go up. Time to exchange dies must go down from 1 hour, 1.5 hours to single minute or less than a minute. So it's all very, very automated. Inspection cost also will come down. Energy cost must come down drastically. So, look at the power factor of your plant load factor and power factors. Put capacitors everywhere. See that, idle machinery is not running anywhere. So a lot of energy costs can be saved, which is very much possible. You can go for full-scale management system programs, ISO 50001, but not really necessary. Just get a good energy auditor in the company. Let him do an audit for you, and he'll tell you multiple tips how to reduce your energy costs. And get rid of excessive documentation. We just don't need this. Just get into a process orientation, get those visuals, get into computers, and that should be very, very helpful to you. So then what you need to monitor is daily reports, of course, and you're doing this already, the plan versus actual production. Process rejection and scrap should be a daily exercise. Inspection rejections and rework should be a daily exercise. Breakdowns, machine downtime, every day should be checked. That should come to you as a manager or the business leader. Inventory costs, finished in process raw material, every day should come to you. And deviations and concessions, extremely important. You have SOP, you have a direction or instruction. How many times do people have deviated and concessions given? Major cause of failures and costs. And then monthly reports on customer complaints, trends, PPM trends in the company, how your rejections are moving in company and as well as customer end. Delivery schedule, non-compliances, that should be a monthly report. Sigma level of the critical characteristics, number of Kaizen suggestions received, sales to variable cost ratio, monthly energy consumption, and preventive maintenance deviations again from PM. PM should be strictly followed. So this should, I mean, this is only slightly prescriptive, but you can do more, but these are most fundamental that will be very good for you. And then what you need to measure. So I don't know what measurements actually happen, but then this will be very simple for you to do, and which is the information is available. It's just pulling it out and putting it together, maybe on a computer. You can create Excel sheets. There are multiple softwares available for getting your ratios of your work on from the workflow. So sales per employee, of course, is quite important. Process equipment downtime, we spoke about it before. This should be one of the measures. Percent PPM of defects or errors, it should be a measure. Number of failures during the warranty period, or if you don't have warranty period, in the first 1 month, in the first 3 months, in the first 6 months after supply or after commissioning. This should be your yardstick. You can also do later field failures from a design perspective, but these indicate manufacturing defects. The first failures, first, second, third, 4th month failures, 6th month failures. The punctuality of delivery. So how many consignment delivered on time, how many supplied before time, so that, or aging analysis that you should do. Number of missed delivery schedules, the cost of procurement. So procurement cost should be the lowest. How many people are deployed, how much money we are spending on freight and logistics and, on warehousing and, multiple things. All that should come down. So if you can also reduce your inventory, the cost of procurement will also go down. The lead time for procurement again, your entire process or an order can remain hanging if you don't have a critical raw material. So you need to get into the ABC analysis. You need to look at the lead time for procurement, broken up from the bill of materials, and then look at how much lead time you require for each component or raw material or even spares, and that should be built into the system. Excess inventory carrying costs. What is the cost of keeping excess inventory? Sometimes you have to keep that, because your customer wants, just in time. So you have to have a cushion, but you must be having an idea how much it is actually costing you building that extra inventory. Then inventory turnover rate. So in 1 year, how many times you could actually turn your inventory end to end? So good measure is about 15 plus. What we normally have maybe as low as 2, 3, 4, 5, but best companies may even have more than 50. So that's the range from 5 to 50 inventory turnover rate. Training hours and employee. I think this is extremely important. Both my previous speakers emphasized on this. Get this into a measurement. Every employee needs training. Every employee and training not only for the purpose of knowledge, but also for engagement purposes, even for interaction. That is very important. So measure how many hours you actually train an employee. Warranty failure costs must be measured, and then the number of service calls that you are actually spending on, and the engineer is going there again and again. And where do you need to invest? Professional and competent managers. You just can't run the show yourself. So wherever required, get managers to manage the show. As you go bigger, you have to have them. Training of employees, multi-skilling is a good investment. Preventive maintenance, good investment. Low cost maintenance, good benefits. Knowledge tools, again, was emphasized by my previous speakers, extremely important. Get information, get internet, get subscriptions, wherever, go to conferences, spend money on trainings, again, all the knowledge tools. Poka-yoke, again, low cost automation helps tremendously in saving costs. Inventory and stores management software, again, will be very useful to you, doesn't come at a great price. Design software, I don't think any good MSME can actually do without this, and there are multiple available, but you must also know how to do the designing yourself. Technology aided manufacturing. So we have a whole new world of Industry 4.0 coming up. So we have 3D printing, we have AI, we have ML, we have machine to machine communication. Multiple things are happening. Many of them will be not your choice. Your customer will force you to do it. So get into it as early as possible. And I know MSMEs who have adopted all the 9 or 10 buckets of Industry 4.0 within the MSME structure itself without customer pressure. So it's possible to do that. Layout redesign, get into cellular manufacturing, get into lean manufacturing, get energy efficient workspaces, again, linked to cellular manufacturing, get into energy audit, that's where you spend money and save cost, get good quality handling equipment. So I received, I bought a new gas stove delivered last week to my house, opened the packet, the glass top was cracked from a chip, from the end. Excellent packing. I'm sure it didn't break in the transportation. It broke in the company. And the cost, so one person traveled all the way from the service center, brought a new glass, installed today only, took it back, He'll send it back to the company. Look at the cost of this whole exercise. In-process measuring equipment is again in-process measuring equipment, not end of life, end of manufacturing, end of process cycle. In-process means it's part of preventive. So if you can have those parameters, process parameters, controlled pressure, temperature, speed, RPM, things like those, this is very, very helpful. And many of them can get now data logged, get into the cloud softwares, for Industry 4.0 kind of an architecture. And that is very, very helpful. And then finally, a good canteen for the employees and clean toilet for men and ladies make all the difference about what kind of MSME you are. It does make a difference, I can assure you this. So just some figures, the last slide is just for your knowledge and information. So, sorry. So this is low, average, and best. So total process time, value-added process time. Okay, so, okay. This is a ratio of total process time to value-added process time. If it is more than 10, so then it's best. If it's less than 3, it is sorry. If less than 3, it is best. This is again a measure of the lean management. Takt time, die exchange time less than 15 minutes to more than 1 hour. So best is less than 15 minutes. Process capability above 2 will ensure that your PPM level will come down to less than 150. Customer and defects, again, less than 100 is the best, but most MSMEs will be operating at more than 20,000. Delivery compliance should be more than 95% on a daily measurement basis. Batch size should be single piece, that's the best. And then plan order processing should be always at all points of time. Housekeeping should be 5S, and inventory turnover should be above 20. These are some of the benchmarks of probably the best industries. These are very standard global benchmark that I thought I'd just pitch up to you as part of my today's presentation, which probably will be good for you as well. So again, to close this, the greatest ranger is from Michelangelo, incidentally. Who was Michelangelo? Great sculptor. He do all those, the murals, in Rome and Italy. But he was also an engineer, by the way. So what did he say? The greater danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and then achieving that low mark. That is what happens to us. We become too complacent, set too low targets for ourselves, and remain happy with achieving that low level, low standard of our capability. So that's not right. What we must do is create those stretch targets, the unattainable, see how far we are from the unattainable. And that's all. We've just concluded the Olympics, and look at what amazing performances we've had from so many people. They set the bar so high. Even if they don't achieve it, they know they're going to do it the next time. Probably that is the mantra that we need to have. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Kaul. It was a very, very interesting presentation and very exhaustive also. I think without the complete presentation and your discussion, we would not be able to do justice, in fact, to the need for understanding the whole issue of quality management. So it was very interesting, and I liked one particular quote of yours, that is best quality at low cost in quickest time. So the quality has to be relative to the cost. It is not that you can produce by incurring heavy cost a good quality product and taking the longest possible time. So all three have to take place at the same time: the quality, the cost, and the efficiency. So it's very interesting, in fact. And the other thing, that there are many tools of quality management and ensuring that we give the best quality of the product. But then the tools which involve all the employees, that also I liked a lot. In fact, you have to involve every employee and all those stakeholders who are, in fact, part of the enterprise, to see that you give the best quality to the consumers. So I think the cost, speed of, which denotes in efficiency, and the easy to implement. That is another important aspect. You can't have a difficult proposition and a tool which becomes difficult for the people and tardy for the people to implement, although it may give you some better results. But ultimately, in terms of overall outcome, probably one may lose out. So
So digitization is also becoming very, very useful, in fact, in ensuring quality management. Digitization is not only in the production space like artificial intelligence and IoT, but also in other operations like marketing and staff management, financial management, documentation management. I know another way of ensuring the operational efficiency. A company has come up called IOU Exchange. IOU Exchange basically helps you in achieving best quality of outcomes in documentation, executing your contracts, and resolving your problems, like basically legal issues, all those legal problems which create a lot of difficulties and inertia in completion of your day-to-day operations. So IOU Exchange is a digital company, basically for helping you in contract execution, contract enforcement, and all that. So I think we come to a very interesting stage where we have a lot of information with us presented by our eminent speakers. And at the same time, I think we can take some questions. So Damini, if we have some questions, we can address them.
So we don't, I think we've had a fairly interactive session today, wherein, we had a lot of inputs coming in live from our participants. Nevertheless, if there are any questions, I urge you all to type in the chat box now so that we can take them forward to our speakers. I don't see anything coming. I have, like my colleague Zumair mentioned earlier. Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Like Zumair mentioned earlier, I would, like to remind you all again to please fill in the form for the pre-budget suggestions. I've dropped the link again in the chat box. And over to you, Dr. Kumar. Thank you so much for today. And thank you to the speakers. So if you could kindly give the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Saudamini. Thank you. It was very interesting session. In fact, it went beyond our allotted time because of the interest that we had in the presentation. It was very, very interesting presentation. Both the presentations were very exhaustive and very interesting. So thank you, Mr. Agarwal, Rahulji, and thank you, Mr. Anupam Kaul. I think we continue to have these sessions in future also. Thank you, Zumair, and thank you, Saudamini, for organizing this wonderful event. And thanks to all the participants. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Kumar.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Kumar.
Nice meeting you, Rahulji. Bye.
Likewise, Mr. Kaul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.